Hello, welcome back. This is Dragonkeeper19600 Reads Harry Potter, and this is Chapter 3 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone, whichever you want to call it by. And yeah, this is Chapter 3, The Letters from No One. So here we go. The escape of the Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry his longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of his cupboard again, the summer holidays had started, and... Wait a minute, what? Did they keep him in there even when he was at school? Never mind. And Dudley had already broken his new video camera, cracked his remote control airplane, and, first time out in his racing back, knocked down old Mrs. Figg as she crossed Privet Drive in her crutches. Cruelty to the, handicapped. That's nice. Harry was glad school was over, but there was no escaping Dudley's gang, who visited the house every single day. Piers, Dennis, Malcolm, and Gordon were all big and stupid. Hey, Gordon resents that. But as Dudley was the biggest and stupidest of the lot, he was the leader. Of course! The rest of them were all quite happy to join in Dudley's favorite sport, Harry hunting. And no, it doesn't involve hunting Robin Williams. This was why Harry spent as much time as possible out of the house, wandering around and thinking about the end of the holidays, where he could see a tiny ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to secondary school and, for the first time in his life, wouldn't be with Dudley. Dudley had been accepted, I assume he means at school. Dudley had been accepted at Uncle Vernon's old private school, Smeltings. Piers Polkiss was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, was going to Stonewall High, the local public school. Dudley thought this was very funny. Public school. They stuffed people's heads down the toilet the first day at Stonewall, he told Harry. Want to come upstairs and practice? No thanks, said Harry. The poor toilet's never had anything as horrible as your head down it. It might be sick. Then he ran, before Dudley could work out what he'd said. One day in July, Aunt Petunia took Dudley to London to buy his Smeltings uniform, leaving Harry at Mrs. Figg's. Mrs. Figg wasn't as bad as usual. It turned out she'd broken her leg tripping over one of her cats. Okay. And she didn't seem quite as fond of them as before. She let Harry watch television, gave him a bit of chocolate cake that tasted as though she'd had it for several years. That evening, Dudley paraded around the living room for the family in his brand new uniform. Smelting boys wore maroon tailcoats, orange knickerbockers, and flat straw hats called boaters. They also carried knobbly sticks, used for hitting each other while the teachers weren't looking. This was supposed to be good training for later in life. Yes, the part of later life where you sit in a room where no one is allowed to speak and you hit other people with a large stick when your boss isn't looking. What, you don't do that every day? I thought everyone did that. As he looked at Dudley in his new knickerbockers, Uncle Vernon said gruffly that it was the proudest moment of his life. Aunt Petunia burst into tears and said she couldn't believe it was her ickle Dudleykins. He looked so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust himself to speak. He thought 2 of his ribs might have already have cracked from trying not to laugh. There was a horrible smell in the kitchen the next morning when Harry went in for breakfast. It seemed to be coming from a large metal tub in the sink. He went to have a look. The tub was full of what looked like dirty rags swimming in grey water. What's this? He asked Aunt Petunia. Her lips tightened as they always did if he dared to ask a question. Your new school uniform, she said. Harry looked in the bowl again. Oh, he said. I didn't realize it had to be so wet. Don't be stupid, snapped Aunt Petunia. Isn't that... You remember the last time you said that to a little kid? I do. It was last week. I'm dyeing some of Dudley's old things grey for you. It'll look just like everyone else's when I've finished. Harry seriously doubted this, but thought it best not to argue. He sat down at the table and tried not to think about how he was going to look on his first day at Stonewall High. Like he was wearing bits of old elephant skin, probably. Dudley and Uncle Vernon came in, both with wrinkled noses because of the smell from Harry's new uniform. Uncle Vernon opened his newspaper as usual, and Dudley banged a smelting stick, which he carried everywhere, on the table. Probably beating the table for some imagined misfortune it caused him. Stupid table. They heard the click of the mail slot and flop of letters on the doormat. Get the mail, Dudley, said Uncle Vernon from behind his paper. Make Harry get it. Get the mail, Harry. Make Dudley get it. Poke him with your smelting stick, Dudley. Harry dodged the smelting stick and went to get the mail. 3 things lay on the doormat. A postcard from Uncle Vernon's sister Marge, who was vacationing on the Isle of Wight. The whole island sank 3 inches when she arrived on it. A brown envelope that looked like a bill, and a letter for Harry. Harry picked it up and stared at it, his heart twanging like a giant elastic band. No one, ever, in his whole life, had written to him. Who would? He had no friends, no other relatives. He didn't belong to the library, so he'd never even gotten rude notes asking for books back. Yet here it was, a letter, addressed so plainly there could be no mistake. Mr. H. Potter, The Cupboard Under the Stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of yellowish parchment, and the address was written in emerald green ink. There was no stamp. Turning the envelope over, his hand trembling, Harry saw a purple wax seal bearing a coat of arms, a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake, surrounding a large letter H. "Hurry up, boy!" shouted Uncle Vernon from the kitchen. "What are you doing? Checking for letter bombs?" He chuckled at his own joke. Harry went back to the kitchen, still staring at the letter. He handed Uncle Vernon the bill and the postcard, sat down, and slowly began to open the yellow envelope. "As slowly as possible. I am sure no one will interrupt me at any point while I am opening this letter that I got just now." Uncle Vernon ripped open the bill, snorted in disgust, and flipped over the postcard. "Marge is ill," he informed Aunt Petunia. "Ate a funny whelk." "Dad," said Harry Dudley, "Dad, Harry's got something." Harry was on the point of unfolding his letter, slowly, so as not to anger it, which was written on the same heavy parchment as the envelope, when it was jerked sharply out of his hand by Uncle Vernon. "That's mine," said Harry, trying to snatch it back. "Who'd be writing to you?" sneered Uncle Vernon, shaking the letter open with one hand and glancing at it. His face went from red to green faster than a set of traffic lights. So, not that fast. And it didn't stop there. Within seconds, it was the grayish white of old porridge. "Petunia?" he gasped. I always have a hard time pronouncing that word. Gasped. It's hard. Dudley tried to grab the letter to read it, but Uncle Vernon held it high out of his reach. Aunt Petunia took it curiously and read the first line. For a moment, it looked as though she might faint. She clutched her throat and made a choking noise. "Vernon! Oh my goodness, Vernon! I swallowed a gnat!" Sorry, no, that's not in the book. Okay, they stared at each other, seeming to have forgotten that Harry and Dudley were still in the room. Dudley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father... It's hard to. Dudley gave his father a sharp tap on the head with a smelting stick. "I want to read that letter," he said loudly. "I want to read it," said Harry furiously, "as it's mine." "Get out, both of you," croaked Uncle Vernon, stuffing the letter back inside its envelope. Harry didn't move. "I want my letter," he shouted. "Let me see it," demanded Dudley. "Out!" roared Uncle Vernon, and he took both Harry and Dudley by the scruffs of their necks and threw them into the hall, slamming the door behind them. Harry and Dudley promptly had a furious but silent fight over who would listen at the keyhole. Dudley won, so Harry, his glasses dangling from one ear, lay flat on his stomach to listen at the crack between the door and floor. "Vernon," Aunt Petunia was saying in a quivering voice, "look at the address. How could they possibly know where he sleeps? You don't think they're watching the house?" "Watching, spying, might be following us," muttered Uncle Vernon wildly. "But what should we do, Vernon? Should we write back? Tell them we don't want—" Harry could see Uncle Vernon's shiny black shoes pacing up and down the kitchen. "No," he said finally. "No, we'll ignore it. If they don't get an answer... Yes, that's best. We won't do anything. But I'm not having one in the house, Petunia. Didn't we swear when we took him in we'd stamp out that dangerous nonsense?" That evening, when he got back from work, Uncle Vernon did something he'd never done before. He visited Harry in his cupboard. "Where's my letter?" said Harry the moment Uncle Vernon squeezed through the door. "Who's writing to me?" "No one. It was addressed to you by mistake," said Uncle Vernon shortly. "I have burned it." "It was not a mistake," said Harry angrily. "It had my cupboard on it." "Silence!" yelled Uncle Vernon, and a couple of spiders fell from the ceiling. He took a few deep breaths and then forced his face into a smile, which looked quite painful. Yes, Harry, about this cupboard. Your aunt and I have been thinking, for once. You're really getting a bit big for it. We think it might be nice if you moved into Dudley's second bedroom." "Why?" said Harry. "Don't ask questions," snapped his uncle. "Take this stuff upstairs now." The Dursleys' house had 4 bedrooms, one for Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia. One for visitors, usually Uncle Vernon's sister Marge. Every time she uses that room, it sinks 3 inches. And one where Dudley slept, and one where Dudley kept all the toys and things that wouldn't fit into his first bedroom. It only took Harry 1 trip upstairs to move everything he owned from the cupboard to his room. He sat down on the bed and stared around him. Nearly everything in here was broken. The month-old video cameras lying on top of a small, working tank Dudley had once driven over the next-door neighbor's dog. Isn't this a charming boy? If this was a different series written by a different author, this kid might have grown up to be a serial killer. You know, maybe. In the corner was Dudley's first ever television set, which he put his foot through when his favorite program had been cancelled. There was a large bird cage, which had once held a parrot that Dudley had swapped at school for a real air rifle, which was up on a shelf with the end all bent because Dudley had sat on it. On the list of things to sit on, guns, not at the top. Other shelves were full of books. They were the only things in the room that looked as though they'd never been touched. Sorry about that, the noise. I was just reading, books. So, not a moron. From downstairs came the sound of Dudley bawling at his mother. "I don't want him in there! I need that room! Make him get out!" Harry sighed and